Welcome to Closing Time with Jeff West. I'm a local real estate agent in St. Thomas, Ontario, and Elgin County primarily. And I'm really fortunate today. My guest is Paul Jenkins. Paul Jenkins is the CEO of the St. Thomas District Chamber of Commerce, and he has been since 2020. He leads the chamber in different advocacy activities, membership events, and business development initiatives across St. Thomas and Elgin County. And I'm also very fortunate because I've known Paul pretty much my entire life, as our moms are best friends. Welcome, Paul.
Thanks so much, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you today. So I want to talk a little bit about the role of the St. Thomas Chamber of Commerce and if you've seen the role change at all since you've been in, for the last 6 years.
Yeah. I started in the pandemic, so the role is fundamentally different than at that particular time. And the pandemic, I don't even like saying the word, Jeff. But it seems both like it was yesterday and a lifetime ago. But the funny thing is, on my very first day on the job, I closed the office because of that. So kind of the first 2 years was really trying to navigate that on behalf of mostly the small business community. So equity in terms of, when they were allowing big box stores to be open and mom and pop shops were required to be closed, trying to be that persistent and certainly annoying voice to government about sharing a bit more equity in that. And then handing out rapid test kits. So, in terms of any sort of what's the regular day to day look like, it's only been over the last 4 years. And ultimately, Chamber of Commerce is really, it's a membership organization that's a generalist business. That's kind of the theme that brings people together. We have over 600 members that are part of it. And ultimately, what we do is we try to create space to network, space to save money, space to promote businesses, space to connect with our local elected representatives, and to really kind of lean into what our businesses are telling us. So right now, and I think you can see this in terms of your role, like it's a really exciting time for our community in terms of growth, job opportunities. I mean, the world's chaotic, but not to say we're completely immune to that chaos, but things seem to kind of slowly be marching ahead. So how do we lead that charge? How do we take advantage of that for our business community and find those opportunities amongst all that amazing growth?
Yeah, and I'm really fortunate that as far as my real estate goes, and as well as my other business with Home Ready Pros, we're members of the Chamber of Commerce, and the events are incredible. The business after 5 get-togethers are excellent. I've been able to network I've brought a lot of companies on to Home Ready Pros that I've met at different chamber events, and I know you've got a big one coming out. The neighborhood block party's coming up soon? Yeah, well,
one, that's great to hear. Ultimately, we're not doing this just within the chamber. I say at the end of every one of our business after 5s that we're a member-driven organization. If we're doing things that you like, let us know and we'll continue doing them. But if there's something you want to see, let us know too. So, one, connecting with your community just at large and breaking bread or having a drink with everyone, that's awesome. But being able to drive business, that's terrific as well. We have a crazy busy week ahead. I'm not sure when this actually gets broadcast, Jeff, but Tomorrow, there we go. Alrighty. So by the time you're watching this, we have an event called Social Issues, Our Business Issues. So really trying to amplify what our St. Thomas is doing in terms of addressing homelessness, mental health, and addiction in our community. And we're doing a great job. We're quite honestly the leading community across the country. Real feather in our cap as we do grow. It's not to say we're immune from those concerns, but we're at least we're measuring it, we're looking at it and addressing it, and actually putting concrete steps in front of it. On Wednesday this week, we have our business after 5 at the Atrium in downtown St. Thomas, co-working space adjacent to City Hall. And then on Friday was the block party that you alluded to, which is, I say to my staff, I'm like, create an event that you would want to go to because at least one person will show up. And so they're like, well, I'd like to have just a kind of a low-key block party. So we're going to have a stage of, various musical performers, dance troupes. I think we've got an accordion player for all the accordion lovers that no doubt are watching your broadcast. And we've got food trucks coming in, or local food vendors from St. Thomas. We've got beer, wine, all sorts of things. So it's really just it's a way to bring the community together. And I think that from a business perspective, it's business giving back a little bit because, a good, vibrant community is beneficial to us all. And it's otherwise just going to be something fun that we'd ideally, we really want to do.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I don't know if I know you were away in Paris for the Chamber of Commerce.
Wow,
so
right? Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've had an opportunity to watch. My last podcast was with Joe Preston, and we talked a lot about the homelessness issues and what he's done, because I know the city of St. Thomas has done a really, really good job
Yeah.
with providing, tiny homes and, the apartments above the train station and continue to work on that, which is awesome that the Chamber's, going to be talking about that stuff as well.
For sure. And I mean, in that particular case, we're the Chamber, like being like, well, what's the Chamber do? I mean, we have no direct role in terms of, the on the ground or the face-to-face intersection with the people that are precariously housed or the support services. But what we do have a role is amplifying that success. So, you mentioned Joe and your Mayor Press. I'm not sure how formal we have to be, but he'll be speaking. So the morning is really kind of setting the stage. Why does business deserve to have a voice at this table? And the afternoon is showcasing, how we've discussed it as the St. Thomas success story. So the mayor is going to be speaking. Dr. Joseph Mai from the Community Health Center is going to be speaking. Brian Elliott, who runs the Inn, is going to be speaking. Danielle Nielsen from Social Services St. Thomas. I think that also gives you an idea of what the approach is to actually address homelessness, that it takes multiple stakeholders, our elected representatives, quite honestly, our business community. Let's pat ourselves on the back a little bit. And from, the acute housing or your kind of first line of defense with the Inn, to really properly do this, it's an all hands on deck. And I think, one of the keys is, we're not waiting for other levels of government to come in and to step up and to do it. We're saying, hey, we actually can form partnerships with different organizations to house our way out of it. I mean, again, it's not perfect. I don't think we're trying to pretend that there's not going to be, step backs and additional challenges that we're not necessarily facing. But I think, one, we're measuring. We know the actual scope of what we're trying to address. We know that there are people behind there that we need to have lived experiences that are coming at it in different ways. We know that you can be housed and you can be homeless at the exact same time. So without the necessary supports, you're not going to necessarily be able to thrive. And I mean, ultimately it dovetails directly in why is business at the table? Because we would ideally have someone moving from homelessness all the way into market rate housing. And maybe they're going to stop along that continuum, right? But we've kind of built that. You see with the new Balaclava station here, your Balaclava school that's now turning into a level of supportive housing, a little bit level of non-supportive, just subsidized housing. That next step would be to graduate into market rent or to actually being able to purchase a home. So I think it's really exciting. I think it shows our community's compassion and our empathy, but I think it shows our community's pragmatism and just kind of getting stuff done. Which I think is fantastic.
Now, is the public able to purchase tickets for?
Yeah. We're got about 100 people, so there's not too many more left if they get this out. But yeah, it's $50. That gets you breakfast, lunch, candy bar in the afternoon, like good coffee as well, good conference coffee. We probably go enough to these events that, you judge a little bit on the quality of that. But again, like the morning, we've got a roundtable discussion with the Minister of Housing and Municipal Affairs, Rob Flack, whose office is just above me. We've got Adam Zivo, who's a journalist for the National Post that's going to call in from the Ukraine, which is where he is right now. We've got a roundtable discussion with me and my peers from Windsor, the Chamber CEOs from Windsor, Barrie, and Belleville that are part of it. And then we've got, what am I missing? The Ontario Chamber of Commerce is coming down from Toronto to be able to present a report. And it's all going to be emceed by Pete Bombachi, who does this project called Genwell, the importance of human connection. So basically his general approach is loneliness is being lonely, and having that is effectively from a health perspective as bad as smoking. So the importance of connecting and having relationships and, knowing your neighbors. There's actually empirical health outcomes that come from that. So he's going to MC the day. And then the afternoon is everyone, as I said, including the police chief, how we've deployed special constables downtown to actually say, hey, so ultimately, so I get rambling excited about this.
That's
but
okay.
Our target audience is basically, one, it's to share the good news about what we're doing locally, but also to share with other communities what they can do. We're often asked kind of what's that secret sauce or what that is. And I mean, I'm invited other communities to speak on what we do. And I'm being like, just to be clear, I create the space to have these conversations. I have nothing to do with it. But the whole afternoon is meant to showcase what it takes for a community to actually move the dial on these issues. One that balances, what we can afford to the human factor that needs to be centered in all of the work that we're doing.
Yeah, it sounds like a great event.
Yeah.
Now, being involved with business life, what are some of the concerns that you're hearing from local business owners?
I mean, you mentioned that I was just in Europe, and that was ultimately to look at, are there ways for our community specifically to grow trade opportunities outside of our largest trading partner in the United States. So I think it's just that uncertainty would be the biggest thing that's not fair. But one of the things most salient on my mind right now is the challenges of the uncertainty, not necessarily the particulars of the rules, because I think in some businesses that the Buy Canadian approach has benefited them locally. I think obviously if you're an automotive parts supplier, which we have several here, they're more specifically challenged. There was another layer of tariffs that were applied in April that are really detrimental to the overall integrated system. So I think that uncertainty is affecting, the broader, just the emotion of it. Like, I mean, we're people and we respond to kind of, our gut is a relevant player in terms of economic decisions. So I think there's that. Then there's a very granular aspect for certain industries.
Real estate being one.
For sure. Right. And I think we mentioned right before we kind of started recording on this, that the world's expensive. Canada's expensive, food. So, supply chains and where we're getting things, it's complicated. So how do you balance that for, no doubt, like a lot of people, again, watching their salaries or their wages probably haven't increased with the cost of some of our other inputs. So I think there's some real challenges there. Like you're seeing again, going back to like the real estate where like there's inflationary pressures that are, are they going to go back to what was there was no rate increase in the last one. They held it.
No, it wasn't. It was held.
So like, what are we into? And again, I want to think that I'm projecting the future any better than any smart economist can, but like, are they going to increase it next time? And then what's that going to do for everything else? Again, there's some beauty. We're purely insulated, but if you even look at the EV, like, Volkswagen or PowerCo, that's moving forward. They've got the flat piece of land. They've got the electrical coming. They poured concrete. They're putting up structure. And there's been a lot of projects that were announced like that aren't happening. And I think one of the other benefits, things might be expensive. Housing is certainly more expensive here than when I moved home about 13, 14 years ago, but it's still accessible. And it's with what you're being paid. So, I mean, might not be, your ultimate, like I'm going to go in one and done. I'm going to have the dream home that I'm going to have for the best life. You might have to kind of scale up as you go through. But, if you can get into a house for $400,000, we're in a really advantageous position. And then you have the other great things that are around with our community. You have great sporting infrastructure, access to beaches, access to excellent schools, great healthcare. So I don't know if we're uniquely positioned. I'm sure, someone in Stratford.
I think we are, Paul. Like as far as real estate goes, I think we are, like the stats show last month, that we're one of the only communities that the average sale price had gone up. And I think the closer we get to PowerCo, the more that's going to continue because we still have a lack of affordable housing. And I think that we are going to see things continue as far as housing goes to move up. It is a very, very difficult market right now. It's certainly a buyer's market with inventory we have. And I've actually been fortunate enough that Rob Flack's office just got back to me that he's going to be a guest on the podcast.
Oh, amazing.
So, yeah. And we're going to talk about the HST rebate on new builds and how that's impacted residential resale, because it certainly has. So we're going to have those conversations as well. But I do think that St. Thomas is in a very, very different spot than a lot of other communities because we are seeing growth here and we are seeing companies come here.
Yeah. And I wonder, this is kind of maybe trying to make lemonade out of lemons. I'm not sure I got that metaphor right, but I think with there was such huge growth. There was growth. If you think about like property values at like that 2-year part where I say, hey, there was that pandemic piece, and then there's been this next 4 years, and at the kind of that height of the pandemic, like I'm like, oh shit, like some of these pricing like have just out of whack, but there was so much growth and so much happening. And I think, what has happened is things have slowed down and not stopped. And I think in other places it certainly has stopped and unemployment, even in our greater London, St. Thomas region has went up, but it's only slowed. It certainly hasn't stopped. And so maybe it allows us to make sure that we are keeping up with the infrastructure that we have. Maybe it's making sure that we're building the right set of new housing, or that we're able to kind of absorb being, you on what? Here's this change in legislation or with the HST rebate. We can plan or we can deliver a better, like take advantage of that versus like we need to go yesterday. And and you can't, there's no waiting for anyone. You still have that excitement about opportunity and things happening in our community, but maybe less of a push to be so reactive and so fast with it.
Yeah, we are certainly lucky here for all those very reasons you had mentioned, the access to the beach and, to Port Stanley being so close and having great restaurants and a lot of great small businesses in the area. And what opportunities do you see emerging for local entrepreneurs and small businesses owners?
We're one to pat ourselves a little bit on the back with the Chamber of Commerce, but to certainly extend that to the other players that are in the ecosystem of business supports here. We're a really easy community to get involved in. So I think we balance two things. One, we have some scale, like St. Thomas proper, is probably close to 60,000 people, let alone give us our metro area and, including Lyndhurst and, some of these other parts were probably 65,000. So we have some scale, like there's opportunities just based on the pure numbers that we have, but we're also not inaccessible. Like, again, like I'm literally pointing up being like our MPP's office is right here. MP's office is within shouting distance here. I've got the mayor's, 300 meters down the road that way. And they're not inaccessible people. Like, you've got like one of the top ministers in the entire province joining you on a podcast in a couple of weeks. You had the mayor's mayor of all the entire country, on your podcast the other day. There's an accessibility to that, which I think is really exciting.
I've had Andrew Lawton on already as well.
Right. Like, I mean, right. There are very low barriers to participation. And I think that's, when I was kind of alluding to the space we're trying to create, I think that's that space for businesses to participate and to figure out, to craft or figure out what are the relationships that I need to do. And I mean, that's kind of my role is being like, hey, I don't know much. I just know other people. So like being like, hey, you want someone that knows reliable contractors. Jeff West is your guy. You want someone that knows, about home and auto insurance, talk to Tom and Sarah at Lock Insurance or Scott Slate Home and Kenny Insurance. You have that ability to kind of navigate with that stamp of approval, which again is kind of your home ready pros approach. And so I think that's a little bit of our secret sauce that it's not inaccessible. Like we're from we both grew up in St. Thomas. There's we love our community. We're proud of our community, but there's not a level of pretension. You're not being like, oh, don't excuse me. I'm from St. Thomas. We certainly still put our pants on one leg at a time here. We've got a lot of great things going with it. And I think it's that low barrier to connecting with the people or the organizations that can be influential. I think that's one of our greatest attributes with it. And then there is the growth. There's the pure population growth. There's the growth in the large multinational organizations, like some of like St. Thomas and maybe Joe's probably mentioned this in the thing, has been home to 10% of all foreign direct investment in Ontario over the last 5 years. So you've got $7 billion being invested with PowerCo. You've got $3.2 billion being invested in with Vinode. So you're playing in the renewable energy space. You're playing in critical minerals space. Like we might be little podunk St. Thomas, but we are playing on all the issues and all the actual future economic opportunities that are looked at worldwide. I mean, that was reinforced when I was in Europe and I was at the European Parliament and they were talking like that was why I was invited to participate in that, is because our local economy is playing in the sandbox of the greatest economic opportunities of our day. Alongside that comes the growth in diversity and multiculturalism. So that's going to bring new ideas, new ways to look at things, a different market to try to tap into. So how do I create that space that, if a lot of our growth is in the South Asian community, how do we welcome that? They'll bring those voices in and leverage that low barrier to access into that connection into the broader community. So I think, that growth, that multiculturalism, and us really being involved in some of the most biggest economic drivers of the future right here in our own backyard is super exciting.
Yeah, there is so much going on here right now, and it's fantastic that we've got, not only do we have the Chamber of Commerce for these, entrepreneurs that want to get involved and do business, but we've got the St. Thomas Development Board, what's the other one? The
PBRC, SB. There's the Elmer Area Chamber of Commerce, St. Thomas Downtown Development Board, the Port Stanley BIA, all of those playing their specific roles and bringing people together. I mean, it's not my event, but you think about tomorrow night after my social issues or business issues event, you could leave there and Elgin County's putting on an economic development event again to try to bring people together. And I think that's not that, again, whatever. We love competition. We're free enterprise. Like do well, be good, win your business. But I think we kind of know our lanes a little bit, like in terms of like, this is what we excel at. This is what we can do. This is the space we can create. And then other people being like, okay, well, here's a gap here. This is what I can do in that particular space. So I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, we've talked a little bit about housing, but how important do you think housing supply is to the continued growth in St. Thomas and Elgin?
I think it should be perhaps more front and center. I'm not sure how. I'd be happy to chat with you further about how to do that. I think there's some of the growth that we've had through PowerCo and some of the initial kind of people moving here, a lot of them, and not to say that when something doesn't happen in St. Thomas, if it happens in London, that's a lot of weight. That's just as good. Like Western Ontario, like the Western is our local university for St. Thomas. That said, what I would love to have is the housing stock that would be able to welcome some of the growth in the employees moving here to take on jobs from PowerCo and from Vinode and from some of the other businesses and the auxiliary businesses that are going to grow here. So I think we need to ensure that we have the right mix of housing stock and have the land ready to actually build that. I know so in the Chamber of Commerce, St. Thomas and the district in particular is Southold and Central Elgin. So we try to have that role there, but they talk about the psychiatric lands. So, how quickly can that come on board? I mean, things like this can be tremendously so either from a bureaucratic or just from a purely pragmatic and practical standpoint. But can we get that new housing stock built in the right housing stock built that's attractive to pull people in? Like, because ideally, like if you're a 6-figure person that's moving to this community, we'd love you to have here. We'd love you to be supporting our tax base, love you to be supporting our local civic organizations, joining our local golf courses here. And not to say you don't get some benefit from that if those same people move into London or an adjacent area, but I'd love to make sure that kind of that St. Thomas, Elgin, we pull in as many people as possible. I think especially like, not to say that we're not a great community in and of ourselves, but like the pulling in people that have lived in other places or had different experience. It's one, it's going to be more interesting. And two, maybe it's going to bring some innovation that we might miss just because there's an easy comfort with it. But yeah, you'll see certainly how it happens. And I think like, if I live in Port Stanley. So my commute is like Port Stanley. By the time I feel like I've left Port Stanley, I can see Union. And by the time I kind of drive through Union, I'm being like, oh, I'm out of Union. I can see what I would say is St. Thomas, even though it's still Central Elgin, but like I'm at the Elgin County Administration Building. So to me, not that they're not their own separate communities with their own identity. I'm not trying to disparage that, but it's one greater economic unit. So like, in Talbotville, for example, Southold, absolutely. But like it's so I got to be careful.
It's the greater area.
St. Thomas, man. Like, I mean, if from the outside, if you don't really, yes, it's got its own thing. It's got its bigger lots and more adjacent to the 401 and maybe a few different nuances, but you're not really like, my measurement is super unsophisticated, being like, did you drive past like at least 5 farm fields before you got to the next community? Then it's like in Talbotville, you used to do that growing up. Not anymore.
Not anymore. No.
It's just community. And now this community part is called Talbotville.
Yeah. One of the things that when I talked to Andrew Lawton and Andrew Sloan on.
Okay.
When we talked about one of the biggest challenges right now in building or really doing thorough renovations on a property to bring them up to snuff, is one of the big issues is how long it takes for permits and all those kind of, red tape things you have to jump through in order to get a property built and get it to where you want. And that's one of the things I know the governments are trying to work on, is to speed that process up in order to have more supply for these people that want to move into our area. I had a property that I did a big renovation on last year, and our house was shut down for 3 weeks because we applied for a building permit. And that's a long time to have to wait. And if you're building a house from scratch and you're looking at permits and things, it would be nice to be able to kind of clear up some of that red tape. I know that's one of the things that seems to be slowing people down a little bit.
Or even to have the standard maybe different from municipality to municipality. Like, we talk about trying to break down interprovincial trade barriers, and that's awesome. And I think also important when we have these conversations, that's labor mobility as much as actually like transactional moving goods and, being able to buy BC wine here. Like there's some really low hanging fruit in terms of examples of that. But, if you're going to go in and being like, hey, one municipality is really easy to work with and one's not, like, I mean, if we're going to try to break down barriers, we could also start with some of these other ones where the standard of, hey, I'm dealing with St. Thomas, and you're going to have the same type of timelines or the same type of understanding or interpretation of the rules and regulations that Central Elgin's going to have, or that London's going to have, conversely. And I know there's different inputs on some of that, different scales, different priorities, different political realities. But I think that's what we need to take this opportunity as. We got a bit of a kick in the pants, things that we relied on or needed to trust or thought we could for a little bit, with a little bit more certainty than we are clearly able to. How can let's fix our own backyard? I mean, let's look abroad, and let's also not forget that, we can diversify as much trade as we possibly want, but the United States is still going to be our largest trading partner. And that makes sense because it's the largest economy in the world and the richest country in the world. And we're their neighbors, and we've had integrated things. So, I mean, there's that pragmatic piece too.
Yeah. What do you think? And I know we have talked a little bit about this, but are there any industries that you see right now that are currently just thriving in St. Thomas?
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously where the investment's happening. One of the coolest businesses, I think, there's actually, I've had a few cool experiences recently, previous to just being in Europe. I was in Japan. And so, we've got two local auto manufacturers, like parts suppliers, one Amino that just did a $50 million investment, despite this uncertainty. So, I mean, again, that's kind of a little bit of confidence in terms of the ecosystem or the longer term approach to things, right? Like, I mean, there's a current American administration, but that's not all the American people and not the guaranteed way of the future. So, I mean, like their plant, I believe it's theirs. Takumi Stamping's the other one, but I believe it's Amino's I was on one side of Mount Fuji, which was super majestic and awesome. And I'm like, actually, there's the parent company of this St. Thomas company, and I'm a half a world away.
Crazy.
So that's super cool. And then one of the other ones, and you listen, maybe they're familiar with it, but Element 5. So a mass timber production. So basically you can make a skyscraper effectively out of wood. And they've just been recently co-partnered with an Austrian company to do a massive investment as well. So you see those very specific, large multi-million dollar investments in local industry. I think that's super exciting. And then when you peel a little bit of layer back, like, I think we sometimes take for granted just the ease or the immediacy of advanced manufacturing. People, that truly don't exist in other parts of Canada, like certainly in southwestern Ontario. I mean, we're that hub, whether it's in advanced tool and dies or the injection molding that Windsor really specializes in. But DMAC automation, for example, like they're doing, really specific robotic work or making advanced manufacturing. So I think there's really some amazing opportunities there. And, whether it's for other things, like the government is looking to spend in certain industries, and part of that is the military industrial complex. So I'm not saying that's for everyone, but again, there's opportunities there if you're able to meet some of these things. And I think we have that industrial scope and that capacity to kind of join in with the industries of the future. I haven't chatted about AI, which I'm sure we could go on and on about.
Oh, I'll be talking about that shortly.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, but with the other ones, with renewable energy and with critical minerals and with the advanced manufacturing, like we've got it all. Like whether right now there's a little bit of can we weather the storm of the uncertainty with our largest trading partner? But once we're on the other side of that, and maybe there's not other side, or once we just kind of get the comfort with the uncertainty. Yeah, I think it's super exciting. And don't forget too, Jeff, even certainly from a real estate perspective, being like, hey, do you want to be in the center of everything? Like you want a Major League Baseball team to go to, it's 2 hours away. You don't like that team, go 2 hours the other direction. You like one hockey team, go 2 hours that way. You like another hockey team, 2 hours that way. Maybe 2 hours. So I'm pointing vaguely in the directions through my.
That's okay. Yeah. We can't tell where you're
sitting. Toronto and Detroit, if we're not saying anything. But I mean, southwestern Ontario is home to 3.5 million people. Where London St. Thomas is 600,000-700,000 people. You go an hour and 10 minutes further, you're at Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, Guelph, which is 750,000 people. You're Toronto, depending on how you measure, it's 7.5 million people. Detroit, the other way, 5.5 million people. Chicago's only 6 hours away. Montreal's 7 hours away. Mm-hmm. I mean, the reason that we existed as a manufacturing and automotive hub in the first place is the reason we're thriving today. Like, we might be in a beautiful agricultural landscape with the benefits of small town living, but we're also in proximity to foremost education places in the world. I think it's a really exciting place for anyone. And there's, PowerCo or Volkswagen could have put their largest industrial site anywhere in North America.
Yep.
Right? They were getting steward. They're getting wined and dined. They're like, here, have that, this, this beautiful dinner, whatever it is in terms of trying to get people to set up shop there. And they chose St. Thomas. And they chose us because it was the approximation to everything else. They chose us because it was an easy place to do business. And, they chose us with access to research facilities, labor force, all these different things. And those aren't going away. Quite honestly, they're just going to be enhanced, and those pathways to be able to support businesses, enterprise-sized businesses like that, are only going to be reinforced and be more seamless because of the investments that we've already had.
Yeah. And our location, Paul, I find with every one of my listings, I can always say easy access to London, because if you're on the east of the city, you've got Highbury. If you're on the west of the city, you've got Wonderland, Wellington Road. You're 10 minutes to the 401, no matter where you live.
Yeah. And I think that, sorry, Jeff, to interrupt, but okay. Even thinking about like people who live in London and work in St. Thomas. I mean, before this, I was working in healthcare, running the hospital foundation. A lot of physicians, they do live in London and they commute to St. Thomas, and it's easier to get the St. Thomas Elgin General than it is to get to Victoria Hospital or some of these, or you just by nature of London. And again, I don't want to slam London. London's great, and it makes us super. And when it's convenient, we're part of the greater London, St. Thomas metropolitan area.
London St. Thomas Real Estate Board.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like what's the saying? Go like we put the star in L-Star.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the residents in St. Thomas. Like, how do you think that the residents, and I know we've done a pretty good job here, but how can the residents support local business, and how is that going to help strengthen our community?
Yeah, well, you see those memes, and there's truth to them about like, $1 spent in a local business stays in the community and circulates a bit more. And I don't want to damn Amazon too. Like, I mean, one, I shop there too. They actually have a footprint here. They employ people that live and work and buy houses in our communities. We can be a more interesting community because of that. Two, there's a way to support the neighbors. And three, they're going to do things in a different way, or perhaps that might be more enjoyable. Like, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm a coffee drinker. As you can see my gallon-sized cup of coffee that I keep putting back this morning. It's Monday after I'm a couple weeks out of the office, so I feel like I deserve that. But like, I'm across the street from Streamliners Espresso, and you can come into St. Thomas and you can get the best cup of coffee you could possibly get anywhere. And it's roasted in the building I'm in right now. It's brewed right across the street, and she's my board chair, so I'm not that I'm kissing butt, but lovely human being. Really like my job, Maria.
Well, they were actually my first small business of the week. Okay,
fantastic. But right, but like one great product. They're doing work that's sustainable. They care about the the supply chain, about what they're doing, the people that are growing their coffee beans, paying their employees a living wage. So you get all those things. So I think those small businesses, another one, not to say, clearly I'm a little bit hungry this morning too, but like you think about Taco House right across from City Hall. Maybe they're going to be a future one of your small members, but like they started out obviously, bringing there's a little bit of a vibrant Latin American community in St. Thomas, and Mexican specifically, but like they're started off doing tacos. Now they're making their own, they're different business, but their own tortillas as well. And they've partnered with, getting a specific type of corn that's grown in southwestern Ontario. So I think when you do look at these small businesses, they're building the supply chains. Again, these supply chains in the conversation about be so abstract, but when you really think about it, being like, hey, I want to make these corn tortillas. Okay, well, I need corn, and I need a specific type of corn. Well, like, I mean, in our backyard, not only can we manufacture the heck out of something, we're also like this agricultural hub. So now we can actually reach out to our specific things, and rather than looking like, hey, we're going to completely import this product from Mexico, we're actually able to grow it, to make it here locally. So I think when you're supporting these small businesses, you're not only are you getting a great product, you're supporting a family that's supporting our community at large, but you're building some resiliency in our supply chains that are, kind of the topic du jour about where we need to focus our attention from a sovereignty perspective, and from these crazy geopolitical things. You can actually have a role in playing and addressing that by talking. We're shopping, not talking. You can talk to business owners too, but I mean, shopping and spending some money there. That said, I don't ever want to damn any of these chains. Like if I think about the guys, like amazing people that are running the Boston Pizza here in St. Thomas that give back time and time again locally with what they're doing, and you want to support them. So I think, again, that's the beauty. There are people behind it. We're not even when they're chains. McDonald's, Gord, I mean, went to Central High School in St. Thomas.
Yeah, there are local owners.
Yeah. Like, I mean, that matters so much. So I think, when you support local, it's not just, certainly there's a benefit to these people that are being like, hey, this is my idea that I'm bringing to you. This is the brand that I've created. This is the product that I've designed from the scratch up. Lovely. Absolutely support those people. They're amazing. They're also a little bit crazy as small business people have to be able to do what they're doing. But, when these other businesses give back and care so much,
yeah,
if they're with a chain, I mean, that's quite honestly, that's still just as good.
Yeah. Well, where do you see St. Thomas in 10 years? I know people ask me all the time, where do I see real estate in 10 years? And my honest answer right now, Paul, is I don't have a crystal ball, and it's very, very difficult. Traditionally, real estate prices continue to climb and climb and climb year over year over year. But right now, values are down.
Yeah.
So I don't know the answer to that question. And I don't know I guess, what do you think St. Thomas might look like in the next 10 years?
Think or want or aspire?
Yeah, either.
Yeah. So I don't know. The twig in my mind, Chicago as a city was established actually later than St. Thomas. And then you'd be like, well, that's crazy. Like, how could you pair St. Thomas to Chicago? But, Toronto 200 years ago, and I do apologize. Like, I mean, I'm ignoring millennium of Indigenous history here, but like as communities that exist today, like, I mean, that was a forest. Chicago was the forest. And now there are these huge dynamic communities with all sorts of culture and industries and everything like that. And I'm not saying in 10 years, certainly St. Thomas is going to be that, but I think we have the opportunity to aspire. There's no significant, I mean, apologies to London, but there's no significant community on the North Shore of Lake Erie in the same way that there are on Lake Ontario or Lake Michigan. So I think the opportunity, quite honestly, is to think as big and as bold as we can for our community and figure out what do we want that. And maybe we don't want that. Maybe we're being like, hey, you want to what? A greater St. Thomas, London area of a million people is just the perfect kind of spot that's going to give us some scale, but balance that. I think that could be terrific. Well, but I don't see the growth of it might be more incremental than revolutionary, which I think is more of a Canadian approach to things in general. That, we'll get there eventually. I think there's been a kick in the pants, like, right? Like, again, there's enough age difference with us, but at the same point, like, we grew up in St. Thomas, nothing happened. Yep. Like 27,000 people the day we were born. It was 27,000 people the day we went away to university. And it was, it wasn't Mayberry, but it was
the same.
It was, yeah, it looked pretty the same. And then we've had this kind of wild sort of, growth over the last little bit that's maybe slowed. Maybe it's settled down some price changes, but I don't see that changing. And even, again, we've talked about location as we've talked about industry, we've talked about agriculture, but I think the other piece is you talk about weather even. I mean, a heck of a lot nicer in a winter here than it would be an hour north in Stratford. I mean, Stratford's got its own attributes. And again, it's not to do that, but I see at most a moderation in the speed of things that are happening and the growth that are happening, but I don't see a complete stop, and I certainly don't see a reversal. I think there's enough projection to say like that.
I agree, Paul. I know what you're saying, and I completely agree. I think we are going to continue to grow. I know when I chatted with Andrew Sloan about the growth in Port Stanley, I mean, it's growing very, very quickly. Not everybody that's a full-time resident that lives in Port is super happy about that. But it is bringing great services to even Port Stanley, and we're getting the same in St. Thomas with our growth.
Yeah. I mean, and it begets opportunities, and not to say you can't craft things or get in the way, like being like, hey, my kind of narrative when things were going really fast, I'm like, hey, there's a tsunami of change coming. So let's get in front of it so we can kind of guide the path where that water is going to flow to make sure that you don't lose kind of the core or the heart of what made your community special in the first place. I think those are really important things that you always need to be asking to do. But at the same point, like, I mean, change, not to get philosophical, but I mean, it is inevitable to a certain point. And if people are attracted to the community, like, I mean, in Port Stanley, like a little bit, I'll never be from Port Stanley. I grew up in St. Thomas and I've lived in Port Stanley for 15 years. So I didn't grow up far away, and I've lived there for a decade and a bit. But, like and that to me is a little bit of charming. I've got enough confidence that like I'll never be from Port Stanley, but I mean, it is my community. And I think there's a lot of like people might get frustrated with the growth and there is, I mean, the beaches are certainly packed. The summer is an especially busy time of year. So there's things that we could improve in terms of how do you grease the wheels to navigate the ins and outs and people and the practicality and the parking spaces and all those different issues. Absolutely. Like, but that's the details of the conversation. Are we a more interesting community than Port Stanley right now than was when I moved there 10 years ago? Absolutely. Do I want to make sure that we don't lose, like, our commercial fishing industry? 100%. I don't want to lose sort of that charm. Do I think our Legion in Port Stanley is one of the coolest places in the entire province? Absolutely, man. Like, I mean, come for the meat draw, stay for the $5 draft beer. Like
Sunday fun days.
Right? Sunday fun days, 100%. But like, does having a bit of a high end Italian restaurant right on the Kettle Creek with a brewery attached make it just a little bit more enjoyable? Or Two Forks, where I'm going to go for dinner tonight with my chamber peers in anticipation of tomorrow's event? Yes, it does. I mean, like, I'm looking forward to some oysters and some shoestring fries and a little bit of a bistro feel in Port Stanley that it is. So, I mean, again, you have to manage change. You have to realize that, everyone's not going to always love the speed of things happening or the change happening at all. But as long as you kind of know who you are and are anchored in at this community, I think we do. So.
Yeah. Well, one last question for you. So what is one thing about St. Thomas that residents don't fully appreciate today, but will look back 10 years from now and realize, wow, that was a turning point in our community?
I feel like that might be two questions, but what came out, the one thing, and I've had the beauty. So I did my undergrad in Montreal. I've lived in Montreal. I've lived in Edmonton. I've lived in Sarajevo. I've lived in Toronto. I've lived in Seoul, South Korea, and had an opportunity to see a lot of things. And one, it was super, this is where I'm losing my thought even. Coming back from a really just a crazy trip that I've just done, some of the most extensive travel that I've really ever done in my life, and driving into Elgin County on a beautiful, sunny, like middle evening sort of time, how special just the general area is where we live, how beautiful it is. And not that I was surprised with that, but it was super pleasant to have that being like, oh my gosh, I was just in the Japanese Alps, and my gosh, the agrarian landscape of Elgin County is just as beautiful. One thing I don't think we acknowledge or appreciate is just how beautiful our park system is in St. Thomas. So from Pinafore to Waterworks to even Athletic Park. I mean, you're a big soccer player. I think about that. Like, I think that's the Athletic Park. I don't think gets enough due. I think it's super cool with the train.
They finally got lights.
Right? Like, I mean, right. And I know you're a big supporter of the local soccer teams as well. And that's one password. But I think the one thing we don't recognize is our sporting infrastructure is elite. It's world class.
It is.
It's world class. Our park system's incredible. And I think, Doug Terry, himself, and then Doug Terry Homes more broadly, and some of our other home builders really understand the importance of connecting our community together. I think we should, one, take the time to celebrate just how amazing some of our parks and recreational assets are, and then make sure that we continue to build and to grow those and to connect them in a way, because quite honestly, there's 6-7 months of the year where you could be getting to places. I mean, even if it's an electric scooter or whatever it is, or if not a bicycle itself, we're a flat community with generally reasonable weather. How can we connect that all together? I think that's one of our big, and not only just St. Thomas, how do we connect that into Port Stanley? Yeah. How do we connect that out to Talbotville? How do we connect that, pull in Elmer with all of that? And, you see the cyclists around, certainly at this time of year, rocking the June spandex. But, let's lean into that even more than we have, because if you think about some of these other communities that are roughly our size, they don't have that infrastructure, they don't have that legacy of parks. So that's, I'm not sure if that got to the heart of your answer.
No, it's perfect, Paul. It's perfect. Well, this kind of wraps things up for us. But what I do like to do at the end of all my episodes is I like to focus on a small business in St. Thomas, and selfishly today, I'm going to be talking about a real estate platform that was created by one of my team members at Weston Company, Gavin White, who is a local realtor and my full-time marketing director. He has created a platform called Talk to the Home, and I truly believe it's going to make life a lot easier for buyers and for agents. Basically, it was built as a conversational engagement layer. So it bridges the gap when a buyer wants information, but is just not ready for an agent interaction. A lot of people don't want to talk to the agent. And even now, when we go on realtor.ca, when a buyer goes on, I've had clients call me and say, Jeff, like, I'm so sorry, but an agent called me. I was just calling to get some information about this property, and they called me, and they might not be ready for that. So this platform is called Talk to the Home. And what happens is with our listings, there's going to be a rider that goes on top. It's going to have a phone number and a QR code that is attached to it. So people driving by can stop, they can scan the QR code, or they can call the phone number or text the phone number. And it is a live listing intelligence. So it's using AI, and the buyer can ask questions about the property, any questions that they want, and the realtors upload all the information that they want to include for the AI assistant to answer. It answers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's going to capture buyers' inquiries, questions. And the one really nice thing about it, Paul, is that right now, lots of different cultures that have moved to St. Thomas, it's multilingual. So awesome. You can ask questions in multiple languages and get the responses in multiple languages. We've had people that are Korean, we've had people that are Portuguese, Spanish, and they've all been able to engage and ask the questions and get the answers. It will also send links. AI will say, would you like links to the photos and the videos sent to your phone? You do not have to speak to a realtor if you don't want to, but it does give you the opportunity. If you want more information, it will link you directly to the listing agent to answer those calls. And one of the benefits as an agent is that it's going to save us from answering the same questions over and over again. Because we get the same questions all the time. How big's the shop? Well, if we know that's going to be a question that's going to be asked, we can include that in the listing, and AI is going to answer that question for them. What school district is it in? Those questions will all be answered. And it also gives the agents all of the data. How many people have called? What questions were asked? How many people use the QR code? All of those things get asked. And I currently have it up on, as of today, I'll have it up on 8 listings. Okay. But one of the listings, I just put the sign up 24 hours ago, and we've already had 245 people scan the QR code in 24 hours. So I think it's a great marketing tool. Has done a fabulous job putting this together. It's been a year in the works. He's been plugging away on this.
Love it.
It will give buyers notification on when there's open houses, if they want to be notified about offers being submitted, if the price is going to be, we'll call it improved, the price is going to be dropped, they will get notification sent to their phone saying, hey, this house, the price has come down. So all of this without having to engage with an agent 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we're going to have some more information following on this podcast. You'll be able to kind of see what it looks like. And if you want to give it a try, you'll be able to scan the QR code right on the screen here and try it out.
Fantastic, man. That's super cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Well, thanks so much, Paul. I've really appreciated your time and conversation, and good luck with the big event tomorrow.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thanks so much for having me, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. And as I end my podcast every single week, let's get closing. Thanks so much.